Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 16 of Therapeutic Thursdays. And today we have with us Aparna, who again has also been one of our teachers and facilitators when we were learning dance movement therapy. Aparna, why don't you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the work you're doing in the therapeutic space?
Sounds good, Purra. Thanks, Deepthi and Purra. It's firstly so nice to see you all on the other side of the training. It's and as fellow DMTs as well. So I think it's really nice. So I'm Aparna Ramakrishnan. I am based out of Chennai, and I'm practicing dance movement psychotherapist. I started my journey with movement at Kalakshetra, which is a dance school for Bharatanatyam in Chennai. And that's where I did my 6 years of training. That was my first time ever getting into Bharatanatyam or any sort of trained dance form. I hadn't learned dance before that. So spent 6 to 7 years training, which was all about because that was my first time even learning, figuring out technique, figuring out the different parts of Bharatanatyam. It was a lot about just focusing on that. There wasn't much about, because I know a lot of DMTs say that, how movement, they realize that it did something for them. But for me, it's a very strangely different story, right? For me, when I first got into movement, it was all about like, okay, how do I get this step right? Right? It was just about that. Until my training, and Kalakshetra holds these really high standards. So to get to that, right, it was a lot. So that was my first introduction to movement. But then, having said that, even though it was a struggle, I didn't notice expression or anything, but I did definitely notice a shift in the way I carried myself and the way I approached myself, or I approached different things. It approached my family, let's say, my relationships in my family. Right? So it did have some sort of shift, but it wasn't like cathartic. So I did notice these things, which made me a little curious and question about it. And to further delve into, okay, what is this? What are these shifts that I'm noticing? What is it about dancing? Even though I struggle, what is it about that? So then I went deeper into it, and I went to London and I did my master's there, and that's where it really made sense. That's where it all really came together, whether it was just this idea of how much our body is capable, but it also sort of translated into my Bharatanatyam dancing, which was, I was like, whoa, there is so much, like, I can experience. And it was almost like after doing DMT, it's almost like relearning Bharatanatyam. That's what it felt like. And then, yeah, masters happened, came to Chennai. It was during COVID when I started working, so a lot of my work started online, and it has been going online. So I work with Parivartan, which is a counseling center in Bangalore, and one of their counselors, and I offer one-to-one sessions there, primarily online, because a lot of the clients are from all over India. I also do group facilitation, workshops, also teaching on courses like the Simtai one and different ones. I'm also part of Tunai, which is another organization that does a lot of work with DMT, trauma, and also maternal mental health. So also working with them to promote DMT and mental health in different spaces, especially in Chennai, because it is definitely. Yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Awesome, Aparna. I think with me and Purva also, our journey started with classical dancing, and then we extended it to what really happens in the therapy space. So a lot of relatability
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
Yeah.
Coming to the discussion topic for the day, we were
Mhm.
wondering if you could throw some light on what this term neurodiversity means. And
Mm.
then we'll
Mm.
talk about dance movement therapy and neurodiversity because people must understand who comes into this population and
Yeah.
don't casually throw the word around and don't misuse it in
Yeah.
any way. So let's understand what neurodiversity is, and then we'll talk about how to bring in dance movement therapy into that uh,
Sure.
community and population.
Sure. So to break it down, neuro is mind, thinking, anything to do with this mental functioning, right? And divergent. is diverse. So oftentimes there is a concept that we look at neurodivergence as a deficit. Right? That's the whether it's a learning a difficulty in learning, whether it's we hear the word, oh, I'm dyslexic. That's such a common word that we use these days that it's just thrown around that okay, I'm dyslexic. I think I'm dyslexic. I don't get it. Right? It's commonly thrown around that way, what and it's often seen as something that's a deficit in something that's seen as something that because I have this, I'm not getting it. But if you just break it down, the idea of divergent means variation, just differences, a difference in the way you process things, difference in the way you look at the world. It's a different way of thinking, different way of expressing, different way of just taking things in. And that's what neurodivergence really is. If you really break it down, divergence is just different processing variations. And it's a different way of just looking around it, perceiving things. So I think if you really break it down, it opens it up rather than just loosely saying, dyslexic or autistic. So it's different processing variation.
Right. So when we talk about the neurodiverse population, we hear that, oh, because let's say it is always the parents generally, I think, who take the lead. And, my child is neurodiverse, and hence I will take my child to these schools or these programs or these therapies. So where does dance movement therapy fit into this entire thinking process of a family?
Of a family, right?
Yeah.
So,
Because
sorry,
I
you're saying?
believe when there is somebody who is in that spectrum, then the entire family needs to understand and, find a way to make things normal for that person, right? Because the world by itself makes it very abnormal, but it is the family whose support is most needed in such cases, right? So that's why I was thinking, as a family, what can they do to live a normal, usual life?
I think just the term normal itself, I would take it out of this equation, right? Just live life. I mean, what
Yes,
is abnormal? What is normal?
absolutely.
I think it's just, we don't think about our lives like neurotypical individuals. We don't think of if this is normal or this is abnormal. We just live. It's, I think the idea even for families is to just embrace and accept what the dynamics in, whether it's your child, whether it's your sibling, whether it's even your parent or an adult in the family, just accept and embrace it. I think that's more than enough for them to just, and that's why I think the beauty of DMT, using DMT for them, for neurodivergent population is because DMT allows that acceptance, allows that form of expressivity, allows that uh, um, creativity. It gives permission to the individual to just be themselves, right? Be their authentic self because we work so much with the body. It's not to do with thinking, it's not to do with cognition, it's not to do with all of those technicalities that the world sort of forces you to do. So that's what the beauty of DMT is. It allows you to be who you are, the way you are. It gives you that agency to just explore yourself in whatever capacity. So I think that's the idea we need to tell families, or families need to understand, is that everybody is special, just the way like parents, yes, it requires a lot more care with maybe a neurodivergent child. Definitely requires a lot more care and support. But it also is, the relation, because the relationship is also, it's still the same. It's still your child and parents. That relationship, that bond is still the same. So yeah.
So, can we talk a little bit more about the stigma that is attached to being neurodivergent? So, for example, a lot of people don't even know this term. A lot of people are still not using this term. People are still sort of grasping with the term special, not even special needs. So, for someone who is on the spectrum or is related to someone on the spectrum, how does therapy help them deal with the stigma that is so prevalent in the society?
I think therapy, like I said, it allows that space for accepting. It allows that space for just um, not the label. It takes away the label. I think that's the biggest thing people are constantly at. It's like, yes, I have a lot of clients who, have come to me, have had a lot of, let's say, dealing with a lot of, they're not able to grasp, they're not able to focus. So then we say, okay, let's get you assessed. Fair enough. And a lot of them get the diagnosis of, let's say, whatever the diagnosis is from their assessment. And somewhere it allows them, okay, I have this. It gives them some form of structure, some form of holding when they get it. Right? But it is just that label. It is just one that we don't need to sort of bring it into our daily lives, which a lot of us do. Not the individual going through it, but the outsiders. You have this, so you're like this. You're different or you're special, like you said. So I think just removing the label and just seeing them for who they are and what they are can help. At the same time, just using the diagnosis as just for your understanding and knowing where you land, where you stand. And I think that's important also. But at the same time, it need not come into everything.
Right. So when we talk about outsiders, so can dance movement therapy help the caretakers and the outsiders to understand
Yeah,
themselves better and their friends or family better?
absolutely. It's actually interesting because in Chennai, there is a university called the Jayalalitha Fine Arts University, which is a government university. And they have started this really beautiful course, which is funded by the government of Tamil Nadu. They have started this course, which we started last year, called the Integrated Theatre Arts for Internal Development, Integral Development. It's a little twisted thing, right? It's basically using the different creative arts therapies. So there's dance, music, art, puppetry, and theatre. 5 arts. How can we use this for the neurodivergent population? So we had bunch of carers come in, bunch of carers who have kids who are on the spectrum, or individuals working in different NGOs come in, right? So it was really interesting to share and hear there. And we were teaching them DMT, we were teaching them the different theories that you guys also learned, right? How do you use DMT to work with them, and how do you use it in your own homes? So it was also what a lot of feedback we got was that, it was good for them as well, right? For them to also use different modalities to, release or express or not think, because I feel like as carers, there's a lot of cognition needed. Acha, this time we have to do this. Acha, now we have to go to school. At this time, it's this class. It's a lot of that. So there is no space to even breathe or let them just release. So for them as well, like using these different creative arts really helps them, just release, express, de-stress, ground themselves, which at the same time, the same support goes for their child or the group of neurodivergent students that they were working with. So definitely, DMT is an exceptional tool for even the carers.
So, can we name a few symptoms, or can we name a few things that people have that would make them neurodivergent?
There's difference. Like, so there's autism, which is a spectrum, right? It's a large spectrum, and where you lie depends on the sort of how much symptoms you do still have, that you do express. So things like social, unable to take social settings, loud noises, sensory overwhelm. So all of that comes is part of the autistic spectrum. But again, like I said, it is a spectrum, so it depends where you lie. Then we have things like ADHD, which is difficulty focusing on tasks, being constantly shifting. I'm talking in very lay terms. I'm not trying to bring in too many technicalities here, but it's like, so that people can understand as well. It's also, when we're not able to focus on one thing. There's constant shift of focus. So I'm not able to give my attention to one thing. That's my attention deficit. Right. So there are many more. Dyslexia, which is a learning, difficulty in grasping things. There's also, I think, dyspraxia, which is motor sensory, difficulty in motor functioning, right? Spatial functioning is one thing, like you can't understand distance. How far is this? If I throw the ball, which directions? All of these come under neurodivergence.
Yeah. And then, so, go on.
So my question is, when we notice that there are symptoms, whether in myself or in the family or friends that I know, so how do I approach dance movement therapy? Should I get a prescription like from my therapist or my psychiatrist saying this is something that you need for yourself or your child? Or is it that as a parent, I take a call, okay, I can try dance movement therapy or other therapies for my child? How do we go about that, Aparna?
I think you go either ways, right? Either you come in to dance therapy, like you said, interest, something different to explore, right? Especially, like I said, the parent might notice a simple thing. Oh, my child likes to dance, likes music. Let me explore that. So they might take them to a DMT practitioner saying, okay, what can we do? Or you can come from the diagnosis side, the psychiatrist, psychologist. They say, okay, fine, your child may need alternative therapies, maybe a creative arts approach would be really beneficial. It could also come in that way. So it could go both ways. Okay, so, but psychiatrists are warming up to the idea of creative arts. I think they're definitely warming up. So we are getting a lot of referrals now, which is a good thing. But it's still a long way to go. Long way to go for that. So a lot of parents, especially with me, a lot of parents or clients reach out directly saying, we heard about this, we'd like to explore this for our kid or for an adult. Both ways.
And so once they come to do dance movement therapy, what are some like standard activities or standard experiences that you do with them?
Okay. I think it really depends. One-to-one is very different. One-to-one you go, it's very on the go. And I think we have also talked about this in, that we go to them rather than bringing us to, So we try to understand their world. So it's like almost like peeking into their world and then taking on the activities, whatever DMT activities come up or interventions that come up. One of the most useful things is mirroring. I think mirroring where it is, the client or the individual or the child or the adult is moving and we are just mirroring and doing the same action in our own bodies, right? So mirroring is said to have really, helpful benefits. If you look at the neuroscience aspect, it's all about the mirror neurons, which are fired up when you do an action. At the same time, it's also fired up when you see someone else do your action, right? So when you're mirroring the other person, it creates that internal emotional connection, right? Which is what is basically is empathy. So when you see, or when this child, for instance, is seeing the other, the therapist do same action as them, they feel like, okay, it's okay that I'm doing this. It almost it validates whatever they are. Because they're seeing my therapist is also doing it and that I'm enjoying doing it and I'm really like intrigued and I'm curious to know what you're doing. right? So it creates that immediate connection. It creates that immediate sense of attunement, right? Being together. So mirroring is a great way. It's one of it's also a lot of research done on mirroring and how it helps with, let's say, autism. A lot of research done there. So that's one DMT intervention that can be widely used. And of course, there are others using props, sensory stimulation. Rhythm is one. Just using rhythmic beats creates a sense of predictability, creates a sense of structure when you're playing the same rhythm, let's say. Same movement sequence again creates a sense of predictability. They become aware of themselves, I think, or aware of their body. And I think the major part of DMT is, like I said, and a lot of neurodivergent individuals are also non-verbal. Right? They are non-verbal a lot of times, can be, right? So when you bring in their same language, which is body, when you're also talking the same language, which is the non-verbal language, it's that immediate connection, that immediate spark comes in. They're like, okay, wow, someone's also speaking my language. I don't need to speak theirs. So that's why I think DMT is so beautiful, especially in this with this population. Yeah, so many interventions like that. Yeah.
So, because you were talking a bit about children, do you see a difference between children who come in with obviously an earlier diagnosis than adults or millennials who have pretty much spent their whole life saying, "Oh, I'm to like this only. I just
Yeah.
cannot focus." And now maybe they know that, oh, there is a name for it. Oh, I might have ADHD. It could be that. Is there a difference between the way they approach you and likewise you approach them in terms of
Absolutely.
working?
With children, it's a lot more easier to connect and they're a lot more ready to explore, right? Because they're just children, they're new minds, and probably parents today are much more aware of the different the different things that are going on, mental health related or cognitive related, anything. So they're a lot more aware. So there's a lot more support that the child receives. So when we get the child comes into a session, they're coming from that context. So it's a lot more easier. With an adult I'm not saying it's difficult, but I'm saying that we need to open a lot more layers. Because they come in with a lot of, like you said, I've had this so long. And they probably come in with a lot of prejudgment, a lot of, because adults, they have to get into the world, they have to, whatever they're doing, there's a lot more focus on them to do well. So they come in with a lot of preconceived judgments. So we have to really open up those layers first, and then even approach creativity or bring in explorations. So it's a little different than a child. Even if the neurotypical individual, whether child or adult, child is here, fresh mind, I'm ready to explore. If this is a pen, and I'd be like, if this is not a pen, what is it? They'd be like a wand, so they'll be ready to explore that. But an adult would be like, yeah, you're holding a pen. What do you mean? What else is it? That sort of little bit, yeah. So it's a little different ballgame altogether.
So, when we are talking about the neurodivergent population, do group therapies work for them? Do they go for individual therapy? What is better, and do both work? And how is it different from a neurotypical population when we do group or individual therapies, right? As therapists.
Yeah. I think for the neurodivergent population, I think it depends. Again, depends on where you lie on the spectrum. If they feel it requires more of individual attention than one-to-one. Or let's say they're unable to do groups, for instance, a child with autism or an adult with autism, where too much group, too many people in a group, too overwhelming, or too many sounds, too many sensory stimulations, too much. So then we wouldn't recommend a group, we would recommend individual, right? which is focused attention. So maybe that's something to, maybe that's what they require. Whereas a group setting also can work for these, for this population because it creates again a sense of being seen not just by your therapist, but being seen by all the other members also present in the group. It also can build social awareness, how do we work in a group? It can create different sort of, those skills can also be explored. Of course, the group also creates a sense of integration. I belong somewhere, right? Especially, I think that's an important thing for anyone with a difference. Is where do I belong, right? I think that's something a lot. So being in a group setting can also create that sense of belonging. Okay, I'm with this group. I'm here. People are, like me. We understand each other. We see the world in a similar way with rainbows and, in a different light altogether. So that sense of belonging. So both have their benefits in a way, but it also depends on what the individual needs are, and then deciding group or individual sessions.
I think it's such a beautiful sentiment or a feeling to even explore and experience as a therapist or facilitator, to see someone adjust finally in a group where they feel
Yeah,
like they belong, they can be themselves. I think it's in itself such a wonderful thing.
yeah.
My question to you, Aparna, is there a way or is there a finite uh, time for them to do therapy, or for a neurodiverse population, therapy is something that they might have to keep coming back to constantly?
Hard to say again. Again, I would say it's very individualistic, need based. I wouldn't say they need to keep coming to therapy. No, I don't think that goes for anybody, that you don't constantly keep coming to therapy. But I think depending on where they are, I think it requires that sort of initial assessment to really see, do you require like maybe a couple of sessions or a few sessions? But definitely, I think any therapist would say a couple of sessions at least. And then, of course, that connection with the therapist always stays. You always keep revisiting, and there's always a progress check. It's a process. Whether you start, maybe some can start individually, then go into a group, or let's say from the group, okay, we need to focus a little bit more, bring them into one-to-one. So it can be worked around, but I think definitely it's hard for me to answer that because I think it's need-based. Depends on everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, building on to what Purva was telling, right? It's a wonderful experience for the therapists themselves to look at this population, improve over a time or understand themselves better. What impact does it have on a therapist? Like, what is the self-care routine or practices that a therapist needs to do in order to be themselves or support the community better?
Yeah, I think let go of biases, let go of our own layers is important. Like I remember when I was doing my master's, I went for my placement. My first placement was in a school, secondary school, where I worked with a group of children who are neurodivergent. I also worked with an individual child who had autism. So I had both group and individual. And I remember going in with so many biases, like, oh my God, I have to work with a neurodivergent population. I need to know what this is. What if I don't know how to handle this? What if I can't do this? And I remember panicking for the first few months. And I was very like rigid. I wasn't open. I wasn't present in the group and my individual session as well. And, because I was also coming from, okay, I need to do, like, let's say if it's a group, like a DMT group, a structure, a usual structure would be warm up, check in, movement, check in again, and then end, right? So that was the structure I went in with. And I was like, no, I have to do warm up. I have to do. So it took me, so I think letting go of that was really important. And of course, my supervisor and everyone helped me. So even if I just let go of those things, for me, just being present in the session, being like, okay, fine, we're working with a bunch of kids who are excited to be here, or the individual client where I remember he used to love he was a child who was Nigerian. He loved music. He loved playing the drums. He loved piano. So every session, I would make sure the school kept a drum and a piano for us. And he would just play tunes, and I would just be beating the drums, and he would teach me. So that was literally the session. There wasn't much to it. It was just us playing music, but that really helped. So I think for even a therapist working, for the self-care would be to let loose. So sometimes even I, if I have to go work with a neurodivergent group or an individual, I would just, really let loose whatever that may be and then go in. Because that's important. So that's my self-care for is to just let go.
Indeed. So I think we'll continue once Deepti is back.
Yeah.
In the yeah. Oh, she's
There she is. Oh,
yeah.
there she's left.
Zoom glitches can't help. But
Zoom glitches, technical glitches.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think this is also like I would love to take this time to give you a little shout out because when you were teaching us, you did a lot of work regarding movement analysis and Bartini's fundamentals, and I have found it so useful in my own practice as a facilitator and even for myself. So, do you think, do you also use those movement principles, opening, weight
Absolutely.
shifts in your practice?
Oh, absolutely. That's. I always just build on those things. And LMA is so interesting. It's simple, but you can build so much on it. And I even taught, like I said, on this course with carers or special with the carers group. Um, I taught them LMA, not as detailed as you guys, but very basic. And for them also, they came up, and I invited them to like come up with their own activities, their own. Well, how would they use the different effort qualities, or let's say partners? How would they use all of that? And they came up with such brilliant ideas. And they actually used them when they went, because I remember going into so after their course, they went into this in its school for the neurodivergent children called Vidyasagar, which is in Chennai. So some of them did their internship there, and I actually went into one day just witness what they were doing. And some of them used LMA principles of just the effort qualities as one of their interventions. And
Mm,
the children received it so beautifully, and the way they facilitated it and how it was received, this idea of slow, fast, the different qualities, it took them through all of that. So it was really nice and heartwarming to see, actually. So definitely, LMA is a big part of
lovely.
facilitation for me.
Yep. Mm. I think Deepti is back just for the right
Hi,
time
Deepti.
because this this part is her responsibility for every call. So
Yeah, sorry, the internet just gave up, or I don't know, Zoom gave up. One of the two happened. But yeah, to continue, or rather to conclude, what we generally do is conclude the session with a gesture, Aparna. Any gesture
Mm,
that comes to you at this moment, or something to sum up the discussion that we had today.
sure. Okay. I think this comes up.
All right.
so
Purva, what about you today?
So for me, this has come up because we had only planned for a couple of questions, but as our conversation kept going on, so many questions came up for me, and I'm sure Deepti as well. And there was just so much knowledge that I've gained out of it regarding this
Mm,
population and your work with it. So it just really got me to contemplate. What about you, Deepti?
Actually, I echo that with you, Purva, because it was this and this for me also,
yeah,
something in the thinking terms, because yeah, there's so much more to learn, there's so much more to explore. And even for the people around us, I believe there's a lot to learn from this conversation of ours. So thank you, Aparna, for bringing this to light. And, I hope it
yeah,
helps many people, and
Yeah,
especially families that are dealing with challenges that comes with having the children at home, or adults at home, or the community, right? Because
absolutely.
always the community is something very hard to deal with when you take paths that are not normal or so-called usual routes. So I hope it really
Absolutely.
helps them understand what it is all about.
Thanks for holding this space, guys. I think you guys it's an important conversation to have, and I think thanks for allowing me to share what I could, so that it sort of helps people understand it a bit better, if not a little bit better, at least. I think. So
Yeah.
thanks for holding this space for sure.
Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so much.
Aparna,
Always.
for being with us. And we had a lovely time
Thanks,
talking to
guys.
you.
Likewise, likewise.
Yes.
Thank you.